It was just after midnight when the quiet neighborhood, usually filled with the soft hum of distant traffic and occasional barking dogs, was suddenly broken by the loud roar of sirens. The flashing red and blue lights painted the houses in a chaotic dance of colors, and people inside their homes stirred awake, confused and frightened. In one modest home, a family slept soundly, unaware that in just a few moments, their lives would be changed forever. Inside, Daniel, a man in his early 40s with a strong sense of responsibility toward his family, was awakened by the sound of what he thought were burglars. His heart raced as he tried to make sense of the commotion outside. It was unusual for police to be in this neighborhood at this hour, and the urgency in their voices made him instantly uneasy. He looked at his sleeping wife and 2 children, curled up under their blankets, completely unaware of the danger outside. Fear gripped him like a heavy weight. In that instant, he knew he had to protect them no matter what. Daniel quietly reached for the baseball bat he kept near the front door. It was nothing fancy, just an old bat he had kept for emergencies. He didn't consider himself a hero or someone who could take on dangerous criminals. But in that moment, he felt an instinctive surge of courage. Every step he took toward the front door was careful yet filled with determination. He peered through the blinds, trying to see who was out there. The flashing lights made it difficult to distinguish shapes, but he could make out several figures moving quickly toward his house. They were wearing dark clothing and seemed to be armed, though he couldn't see clearly. His mind raced, trying to decide the best way to handle the situation. Outside, a team of police officers had been called to respond to a report of suspicious activity. The information they had been given led them to what they thought was the correct address. They believed a crime was in progress and were prepared for any kind of threat. Their hearts were pounding, their minds focused on stopping what they believed could be a dangerous situation. The officers approached with caution, shouting commands and giving warnings. But the address they had was off by a single number, a tiny mistake that would have devastating consequences. In their urgency to act, no one double-checked. The tension of the night, the fear of what could happen, and the adrenaline coursing through their veins made them act quickly, almost reflexively. Daniel, seeing these figures moving toward his door, shouted warnings. "Stop, stay back. This is my house." His voice was firm, protective, and filled with the desperation of a father and husband trying to keep his family safe. Inside, his wife Emily clutched their youngest child tightly, her mind racing with questions and fear. She had never seen Daniel like this, so focused and tense, yet every action he took was driven by love and the desire to protect them. The children, sensing the urgency and panic in the house, started to cry quietly, not understanding the full danger but feeling the tension in the air. The officers outside, hearing Daniel's shouts and seeing him holding the bat, misinterpreted the situation. In low visibility and the stress of the moment, any movement or loud voice could be seen as aggression. They shouted commands for him to drop the weapon, but in the darkness the words could barely be heard. The flashing lights made shadows dance across the walls and ground, creating a scene that looked far more dangerous than it actually was. Daniel's mind was a whirlwind of fear and instinct. He thought about what could happen if the intruders entered. He imagined the worst-case scenario, every possible way the night could turn tragic, and each thought fueled his determination. He could not let anyone harm his family. He knew the risks, he knew the danger. Yet in that moment, he was ready to face whatever came through that door. He positioned himself between the approaching figures and the rooms where his family slept. Every muscle in his body was tense, his senses heightened. He could hear every footstep, every whisper, every rustle of leaves outside. The world had shrunk down to that one house, that one night, that one decision to protect those he loved. Emily tried to calm herself and the children, whispering reassurances while also trying to listen to Daniel's instructions. The tension in the house was unbearable. Each second felt like a minute, each movement amplified by the fear that something terrible could happen at any moment. The children clung to her, their small hands gripping her tightly, eyes wide with confusion and fear. They did not understand the danger, but they felt it. They felt their father's protective energy, and they felt the officer's presence outside, though they did not know who they were. From the officer's perspective, the situation was chaotic and unpredictable. They had trained for tense moments like this, yet the unexpected made every decision harder. Their adrenaline was high, their focus sharp, but the pressure to act quickly added to the confusion. They could see a man standing in the doorway with a bat, heard shouting and movement, and feared for their safety. In that split second, assumptions were made. The line between perceived threat and reality blurred in the night. Daniel's mind raced. Should he step back? Should he confront? Should he try to reason with the figures outside? The fear for his family overpowered every other thought. He shouted again, louder this time, warning the intruders to stay back. Every word, every movement was meant to protect, to create distance, to ensure that his loved ones remained safe. He did not want to fight, but he was prepared to do whatever was necessary. Neighbors peeked through their windows, seeing flashes of light, hearing the shouting, and sensing something serious happening. Some grabbed their phones to call 911, trying to understand what was happening. Others watched in stunned silence, unable to believe that such a violent, frightening event was unfolding in their usually peaceful neighborhood. Whispers of fear and confusion spread through the streets as people tried to make sense of the chaos. Inside, Daniel's thoughts were a mixture of fear, love, and resolve. He thought about the children, their small faces, their laughter, their innocence, and how fragile their lives were. He thought about Emily, her strength and her kindness, and how unfair it was for her to be caught in such a moment. Every heartbeat was a reminder of the stakes, of the urgency, of the responsibility he felt pressing down on him. Outside, the officers were closing in, every step measured but hurried, every sense on alert. They could not see clearly in the dark, could not hear the full context of Daniel's shouts, could not know the fear and love driving his actions. All they saw was a man standing in a doorway, a potential threat in a dangerous situation. Their training told them to prepare for the worst, to act to protect themselves and others. The night had become a powder keg, ready to explode with the smallest spark. Daniel's hand tightened around the bat, knuckles white with tension. He whispered to himself a silent prayer, a plea that this night would end without harm. He tried to reason, tried to communicate, but the cacophony of lights, shouts, and fear made it nearly impossible. Every moment felt like a lifetime. Every movement could change the course of events forever. Emily, holding the children close, felt her heart pound in her chest. She trusted Daniel, knew his instincts, and hoped against hope that the danger would pass without violence. She whispered softly to the children, telling them to stay calm, trying to mask her own fear, trying to keep a sense of safety in a situation that felt anything but safe. The house, normally a place of comfort and security, now felt like a battleground with tension so thick it could almost be touched. The moment was approaching, the seconds crawling, each one filled with anticipation and dread. Outside, the officers prepared for the worst, hands on their weapons, hearts racing, adrenaline flooding their veins. Inside, Daniel stood ready to defend, his body coiled like a spring, every sense alert, every thought focused on protecting those he loved. The night had transformed into a test of instinct, courage and love with the outcome hanging by a thread, fragile and uncertain. This was the calm before the storm, the moment when everything could change in an instant. Every decision, every action, every misstep carried enormous consequences. Daniel's resolve was unshakable, his love for his family unmeasurable, and his fear tempered by the need to act. Outside, the officers were ready to intervene, unaware that the home they approached was not the one they intended to reach. A mistake, small and seemingly insignificant, had set in motion a chain of events that would soon lead to heartbreak and tragedy, changing the lives of everyone involved forever. The night air was thick with tension as the officers moved closer to the house. Each step they took was cautious but fast, their eyes scanning for any sudden movement, their ears straining to pick up any sound that might signal danger. They were trained for situations like this, but training could only prepare them for so much. Reality had a way of twisting, of making even the simplest scenarios feel unpredictable. The flashing lights from their vehicles cast eerie shadows across the walls and trees, turning familiar shapes into something threatening and unknown. Inside the house, Daniel's heart pounded in his chest. Every sound outside made him flinch. Every shadow made him tense. He could hear the officers shouting, though he couldn't make out all the words. Their commands were mixed with the chaos of the night, making it impossible to understand exactly what they were saying. All he knew was that his family was in danger, and he would not let anyone harm them. He tightened his grip on the bat, feeling the weight of responsibility heavier than ever. Emily, still holding the children close, whispered to them to stay calm. She tried to control her own fear, knowing that panic from her would only make the situation worse. She could see Daniel through the dim light standing protectively in the doorway, and she felt both fear and admiration. He was not a trained soldier or law enforcement officer, but in that moment he was every bit as brave. Her mind raced with questions. Why were the police here? Was this really a mistake? How could something so terrifying happen in a place that had always felt safe? The officers, on the other hand, were moving carefully, weapons drawn, every sense on high alert. They had been told that a crime was happening at this location, and they prepared themselves for any threat. Their hearts raced, adrenaline surging through their veins, making their muscles tense and their minds focus sharply on what they believed could be a dangerous situation. They could see a man standing in the doorway holding an object, shouting at them. In the dark, with the shadows playing tricks on their eyes, it was easy to see how they could mistake Daniel's bat for a weapon, his protective shouts for aggression. Daniel shouted again, louder this time, warning them to stay away. He felt the urgency rising, the danger increasing with each passing second. He knew that if the intruders, or whoever they were, entered the house, the family would be at risk. The bat in his hands felt heavier than ever, a symbol of his determination and love. He took a careful step forward, trying to make it clear that he was defending his home, not looking for a fight. But every move he made was misinterpreted by the officers outside. The children, sensing the tension and fear in the house, cried quietly. Their small voices were drowned by the chaos outside, but every cry added to the sense of urgency and danger. Emily tried to comfort them, her arms wrapped tightly around their small bodies. She whispered words of love and protection, trying to keep them grounded while also keeping herself composed. Her mind was spinning, trying to reconcile what was happening with the reality she knew, that their neighborhood had always been peaceful, that their home was supposed to be a safe place. The officers exchanged quick glances, communicating with each other in sharp, brief phrases. They were trained to respond in seconds, to make split-second decisions that could mean life or death. In their minds, the situation was escalating rapidly. The man standing in the doorway was not responding the way they expected, his movements defensive and unpredictable. Their training told them to be prepared, to act decisively, but the human element, the fear, the misunderstanding, added layers of complexity that no training could fully anticipate. Daniel's mind raced as he tried to think of a way to protect his family without causing harm. He thought about calling out more clearly, about putting down the bat and raising his hands, but fear held him back. The fear of the unknown, the fear of the people outside, the fear for the lives of his wife and children, it all combined into a single, overwhelming force that drove him to stand his ground. He shouted again, trying to make it clear that he was defending his family, not looking to fight. The sound of his voice echoed in the still night, sharp and urgent. Outside, the officers interpreted his actions as defiance. They could not see the context of his fear, the love and protection that motivated his movements. All they saw was a potential threat, a man holding an object, refusing to comply with commands. In high-stress situations, the mind can fixate on perceived danger, filtering out information that does not fit the narrative of a threat. The flashing lights, the darkness, the confusion, it all contributed to a sense of urgency that made careful judgment almost impossible. Emily tried to reason with Daniel from inside the house, whispering for him to step back, to try to communicate more clearly. Her words were filled with fear, but also with reason, attempting to bridge the gap between what Daniel saw and what was happening outside. She knew he was brave, but she also knew that the situation could turn tragic in an instant. Her heart ached with the thought of what could happen if the misunderstanding continued. The officers closing in on the house were prepared to use force if necessary. Their training, their instincts, and the fear of potential danger all converged in a moment of high tension. Every movement Daniel made was scrutinized, every word analyzed through the lens of a high-stakes scenario. The night had become a blur of lights, shadows, and confusion, each side interpreting the actions of the other in the most extreme way possible. Daniel's hands shook slightly as he held the bat, his mind filled with thoughts of his family's safety. He remembered the moments before the sirens, the peaceful night, the quiet neighborhood, and contrasted it with the chaos unfolding now. It was almost unreal, a nightmare that had come alive. Yet, despite the fear, his resolve never wavered. He was determined to protect his loved ones no matter the cost. The officers outside were communicating rapidly, issuing commands, trying to control the situation. Their voices were sharp, urgent, but lost in the chaos of the night. Miscommunication, poor visibility, and the adrenaline-fueled fear made it nearly impossible to understand the full reality. Each second stretched endlessly, every decision carrying enormous weight. They were facing a scenario that was both familiar in its danger and unfamiliar in its details. Emily, holding the children tightly, prayed silently. She prayed for their safety, for Daniel's courage to see them through this, for the officers to realize the mistake before it was too late. Her thoughts were a mix of hope and despair, her emotions a whirlwind of fear, love, and desperation. She tried to steady the children, whispering reassurances she barely felt herself. She had never imagined that their home, their sanctuary, could become the center of such terror. Daniel, sensing that the situation was reaching a critical point, considered every possible action. Should he lower the bat, step away, try to communicate more clearly? The fear of a sudden attack, the fear for his family, made hesitation impossible. He chose to stand firm, his voice carrying warnings, his body positioned between the approaching figures and the rooms where his family slept. Every instinct screamed at him to protect, to defend, to do whatever was necessary to keep them safe. Outside, the officer's focus was narrowed to the perceived threat. Every detail, every movement, every sound was filtered through the lens of danger. Their training, while rigorous, could not account for the full emotional weight of the moment, the human element that complicated every decision. In their eyes, the man holding the bat and shouting was a threat to their safety and the safety of others. The night had become a crucible, testing courage, judgment, and the limits of human perception. The tension in the air was almost unbearable. Inside, the family huddled together, every sound outside sending waves of fear through the house. Daniel's grip on the bat was unyielding, his mind focused entirely on protection. The officers outside were prepared to act decisively, unaware of the innocence behind the door they approached. The stage was set for a moment that could change everything. A moment where fear, misunderstanding, and split-second decisions would collide in ways that none of them could fully predict. In that house, time seemed to slow. Every heartbeat, every breath, every step was magnified. Daniel's determination, Emily's hope, the children's fear, and the officer's readiness all converged in a single tense reality. The night, once peaceful, had become a scene of chaos and uncertainty. Each second carried with it the weight of life and death, of love and fear, of human error and instinct. The story of this night was unfolding, a story that would soon leave a mark on everyone involved, a story of courage, tragedy, and the fragile nature of life itself. The moment that had been building for what felt like hours finally arrived with terrifying suddenness. A gunshot echoed through the quiet night, a single, sharp sound that shattered the fragile sense of safety in the house. Daniel fell to the floor, his body tense and motionless, and the room seemed to freeze around him. Emily screamed, her voice raw with shock and terror, clutching the children tightly to her chest. The children wailed, the sound piercing the night and filling the small house with an unbearable grief. Outside, the officers froze, realizing in an instant the gravity of what had just happened. Their hearts pounded in their chests, adrenaline spiking as the enormity of the mistake hit them. They had shot a man who was not a threat in the way they had feared. In the chaos and confusion, a tragic miscalculation had led to the death of an innocent person. The flashing lights that once seemed to warn and protect now felt like a cruel reminder of what had gone wrong. Emily's mind was spinning. She could not comprehend what had just occurred. Daniel, who had been standing between danger and her children just moments before, was now on the floor lifeless. Her body trembled with a mix of grief and rage, unable to believe that the people who were supposed to protect the community had caused this. Her children clung to her, their small faces wet with tears, sensing the sudden emptiness where their father had been. The officers called for backup and medical assistance, their voices shaking as they relayed the situation. They were trained to act decisively in high-risk scenarios, but no amount of training could have prepared them for the immediate realization that they had taken the life of someone who was only trying to protect his family. Every instinct, every decision made in the seconds before the shot had seemed justified, but in hindsight it was clear that a single, tragic error had changed everything. Paramedics arrived within minutes, their sirens adding to the confusion and fear that already filled the neighborhood. They worked quickly, but it was too late. Daniel's life could not be saved. Emily held her children as the medical team confirmed what she already knew in her heart. The grief was immediate, overwhelming, and all-consuming. She felt as though the world had been torn from under her feet, leaving her and her children suspended in a nightmare they could not escape. Neighbors had gathered at windows and doorways, some recording the scene on their phones, others calling loved ones to explain what they were witnessing. Whispers of horror and disbelief rippled through the streets. How could such a thing happen in a peaceful neighborhood? How could trained officers make such a mistake? Questions filled the air, but no answers came. The reality was too stark, too cruel, and the human cost was impossible to ignore. Inside, Emily tried to comfort the children, though she herself was struggling to process the reality of Daniel's death. She whispered that everything would be okay, that they were safe now, though she knew it was a lie. The house, which had been a sanctuary, now felt like a tomb. Every corner, every shadow, every sound reminded her of what had just been lost. The children, too young to fully understand death, clung to her, their minds unable to grasp the absence of their father, only feeling the deep emptiness and fear. The officers, still outside, were grappling with their own emotions. Shock, guilt, and fear mingled in a confusing swirl. They had come to serve and protect, yet in a single irreversible action they had caused immense pain and loss. Their radios crackled with communication, but every word felt hollow, a futile attempt to address the unaddressable. Each of them knew that no procedure, no protocol could undo what had happened. No apology could bring back the life that had been taken. As the night wore on, investigators arrived to examine the scene. They documented every detail, every angle, every movement, trying to piece together the sequence of events that led to this tragedy. It became evident that a simple mistake in the address had started a chain reaction, magnified by fear, confusion, and the high stakes of the situation. The officers had acted with urgency and intention, yet their actions had collided with the innocent reality inside the house, resulting in devastation. Emily sat with her children in the living room, holding them close as the sounds of investigation continued around them. The flashing lights of police cars and ambulances painted the walls in shifting patterns, a reminder of the chaos outside. She tried to focus on the small human details, the way her youngest child's hand felt in hers, the warmth of her older child's head against her shoulder, the lingering presence of Daniel in the familiar spaces of the home. These details were the only anchors in a night filled with loss and uncertainty. Neighbors approached cautiously, offering condolences and support. Some brought blankets, others food, but nothing could alleviate the grief that had entered the house. The community, usually quiet and reserved, found itself united in shock and anger. People spoke in hushed tones about the unfairness, the tragedy, and the questions that would linger long after the night ended. The media began arriving, capturing the story of a night that had spiraled out of control. Reporters spoke with neighbors and officials, trying to understand how such a devastating mistake could occur. Social media lit up with the story, spreading quickly as outrage and sympathy flowed in equal measure. People questioned the protocols, the training, and the judgment that had led to the death of a man who had only been protecting his family. Emily, despite her grief, tried to remain strong for the children. She spoke softly, telling them about their father and the way she wished she could have kept him alive in that moment. She recounted stories of his kindness, his love, and his unwavering commitment to their family. Every word was a fragile bridge between the world before and the reality after, a way to help the children navigate the unimaginable. The officers involved were placed on administrative leave as the department launched an internal review. Policies and procedures were scrutinized, and experts were called in to analyze the situation. While changes and improvements were promised, none of it could return Daniel to his family. The investigation revealed the critical mistakes, the miscommunication, the wrong address, and the rapid escalation that led to a fatal misunderstanding. Each finding was a stark reminder of how quickly human error can result in irreversible tragedy. As the night gave way to dawn, the neighborhood slowly returned to an eerie quiet. The flashing lights disappeared, the sirens faded, and a sense of emptiness settled over the house. Emily sat in the living room with her children, the first rays of morning casting soft light over a space that had felt like a battlefield just hours before. She felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on her, the need to continue, to protect her children, and to honor Daniel's memory. Neighbors continued to offer support, but the house was forever changed. The familiar sounds and smells of home were now interwoven with grief and memory. Every corner held reminders of Daniel's presence, every shadow a reflection of the night's events. The community had witnessed the fragility of life and the consequences of a single mistake, and the story would be remembered as a tragic example of human error and the heavy cost it can bring. Emily held her children tightly, feeling their small bodies tremble with fear and sadness. She whispered promises that life would continue, that love and family would endure even in the face of unbearable loss. She knew the road ahead would be long, filled with grief, anger, and difficult choices. But in that moment, the focus was on survival, on comforting the children, and finding a way to navigate a world forever changed by a single, devastating night. The memory of Daniel, of his courage and love, would remain a guiding presence in their lives. He had stood in the face of danger, protecting those he loved, and his actions, though ending tragically, were a testament to the strength of human love and the instinct to protect family at all costs. The night had ended in heartbreak, but it had also revealed the depth of courage, love, and resilience that could exist within a family facing unimaginable loss. Though the officers' actions could not be undone, and though the questions would linger, the story of this night became a powerful reminder of the importance of careful judgment, communication, and empathy in moments of crisis. For Emily and her children, the focus was survival, healing, and honoring the man who had given everything to protect them, leaving a legacy of bravery and love that would endure long after the events of that fateful night. In the days that followed, the reality of what had happened settled heavily over Emily and her children. The grief was raw, relentless, and sometimes unbearable. Each morning, waking up to the empty space where Daniel had been was like stepping into a nightmare they could not escape. The neighborhood, usually familiar and comforting, now felt filled with reminders of the tragedy. The flashing lights, the sirens, and even the sound of police cars passing by brought back the memory of that night in vivid detail. Emily had to find strength she didn't know she possessed. Every decision now carried the weight of keeping her children safe and giving them some sense of normalcy, even though the foundation of their lives had been shattered. She tried to maintain routines, preparing breakfast, getting the children ready for school, and keeping their home orderly, but each act felt heavy, burdened by the absence of Daniel's presence and the memory of the tragedy. Every room, every object, every sound reminded her that life had been altered forever. The community had rallied around them, offering support in small and large ways. Neighbors brought meals, friends and extended family offered to watch the children for a while, and strangers left flowers and notes at the doorstep. But while these gestures provided temporary comfort, they could not replace the man who had been taken from them. The support was appreciated, yet the pain remained unrelenting, a constant companion in their day-to-day lives. Meanwhile, the police department launched a formal investigation into the incident. Internal reviews examined every detail: the wrong address, the chain of communications, and the split-second decisions that had led to Daniel's death. The officers involved were placed on leave, and questions about protocol, judgment, and accountability filled the discussions at every level. Experts were called in to analyze the case, looking for lessons to prevent such tragedies in the future. It became clear that a combination of errors, small and human, had culminated in an unimaginable loss. Emily struggled with conflicting emotions. She understood that the officers had been acting according to what they believed was their duty, yet the reality of what had happened made it impossible for her to feel anything but sorrow, anger, and frustration. She had lost a husband and protector in the most senseless way, and no explanation could fully heal the wound. The investigators' findings, the reports, and the analysis could not restore what had been taken from her family in those critical moments. The media coverage amplified the grief and the scrutiny. News outlets reported the story, neighbors shared accounts, and social media exploded with reactions. People debated the actions of the police, questioned policies and training, and expressed outrage over the preventable nature of the tragedy. Emily found herself facing the difficult decision of whether to speak publicly about the events or to protect her family from further exposure. Every word and every interview carried weight, each a reminder of the events that had changed their lives forever. The children, though young, began to process the absence of their father in different ways. Some days they would cry inconsolably, unable to comprehend the permanence of death. Other days they would act out, testing boundaries, seeking attention and reassurance. Emily learned to navigate these expressions of grief, understanding that each reaction was a part of their healing process. She listened, comforted, and supported them, even while feeling her own sorrow pressing down. Community support continued to play an important role. Vigils were held in front of their home, neighbors lit candles and shared stories of courage, and friends organized small gatherings to honor Daniel's memory. These acts, though bittersweet, offered moments of connection, reminding Emily and her children that they were not alone in their grief. They witnessed firsthand the impact Daniel had had on those around him and how one life could touch so many hearts. Meanwhile, conversations about accountability and reform began to grow louder. People demanded transparency in the investigation and called for reviews of police protocols to ensure that such tragedies would not happen again. Experts highlighted the importance of communication, verification of addresses, and the human cost of high-pressure situations. Emily found some solace in the idea that Daniel's death might lead to changes that could protect others, though it could never undo the loss her family had endured. The officers involved faced the complex reality of personal and professional consequences. Their actions were scrutinized not only legally but morally and emotionally. They had to confront the fact that a mistake, made in a fraction of a second, had ended an innocent life. The internal struggle was immense as guilt, shame, and responsibility weighed heavily on them. For many, this became a turning point in their careers, forcing them to reflect on the delicate balance between duty, human error, and the value of life. Emily, in her own way, began to find ways to honor Daniel's memory. She talked to the children about their father, shared stories of his bravery and love, and kept his presence alive in their daily lives. Family rituals became acts of remembrance, from cooking his favorite meals to telling stories about him at bedtime. Though each day carried its share of pain, these small acts of memory offered a thread of continuity, a way to keep his spirit present even in his absence. The community, still reeling from the events, started discussions about safety, responsibility, and empathy. Neighborhood meetings and forums were organized to address concerns and share experiences. Residents wanted to understand how such a tragedy could occur and how they could work together to prevent it in the future. Emily participated when she felt able, using her voice to advocate for awareness and change, finding strength in the idea that her family's loss could teach others important lessons. Emily's grief was complicated, layered with sorrow, anger, and an ongoing need to protect her children. She leaned on family, friends, and professional counselors to navigate the intense emotions. Therapy sessions allowed her to speak openly, process the trauma, and develop strategies for helping her children cope. Each session was difficult, but they were essential in giving her the tools to continue forward. Despite the seemingly insurmountable pain, the media attention, while overwhelming, also became a platform for advocacy. Stories of the incident were shared widely, prompting conversations about law enforcement, human error, and accountability. Emily carefully considered every interaction with journalists, balancing the need for privacy with the desire to highlight systemic issues that could prevent future tragedies. She wanted Daniel's story to matter, to contribute to change that might save other families from experiencing the same heartbreak. The house, once a place of comfort, continued to feel different. Every corner, every room, carried the weight of memory and loss. Yet it also became a space where Emily and her children could continue to live, to grow, and to honor Daniel's life. They adapted to a new normal, one that was filled with grief but also with resilience, love, and the quiet courage to move forward despite the tragedy. Emily began writing letters to Daniel, a personal ritual to express her thoughts, fears, and hopes for their children. She shared these moments with the children in her own way, teaching them that grief could coexist with love, that sorrow could be transformed into memory, and that even in loss, life carried meaning. Each letter became a testament to Daniel's impact, a bridge between past and present, and a symbol of enduring love. As the months passed, the investigation continued, and slowly, public attention shifted to discussions of reform and awareness. Policies were reviewed, training protocols were evaluated, and discussions about the role of human error in law enforcement gained prominence. Emily watched these developments with cautious hope, understanding that while they could not bring Daniel back, they could prevent similar tragedies for others. The children gradually began to adjust to life without their father, learning to express their emotions and cope with the absence. Emily remained a steadfast guide, nurturing their resilience and reinforcing the lessons of love, courage, and protection that Daniel had exemplified. She held on to the belief that by keeping his memory alive, she could provide her children with a sense of stability and continuity, even in the midst of loss. Through all of this, Emily learned the delicate balance of grief and strength, of remembering the past while moving forward. The tragedy had left scars, but it also revealed an inner resilience she had not known she possessed. She became a voice for her family, a protector in a new way, carrying forward the lessons of courage, love, and the human cost of mistakes. The story of that night, of Daniel's bravery and the tragic consequences of a miscalculated action, continued to resonate in the community. It sparked conversations, inspired change, and reminded everyone of the fragility of life and the importance of careful judgment. For Emily and her children, it became a narrative of resilience, remembrance, and the ongoing journey of navigating life in the wake of unimaginable loss. Though the pain remained, Emily found ways to transform grief into purpose, honor into action, and loss into a continuing story of love and memory. The neighborhood, the community, and even the officers involved were forever changed by the events of that night. But through it all, the family carried the legacy of Daniel's courage, his love, and his unwavering commitment to protect those he cherished most, leaving an indelible mark on the world around them. The months that followed Daniel's death were some of the hardest Emily had ever faced. Each day carried the weight of the previous night, the memory of the gunshot, and the emptiness left by his absence. Life felt different now, and even the smallest tasks seemed monumental. Making breakfast, helping the children with homework, and maintaining the household all felt heavier, imbued with the constant reminder that Daniel was no longer there to share these moments with them. Every action, every thought carried the weight of grief, and yet she had to continue for her children's sake. The children were learning to navigate a world without their father, their emotions swinging between sadness, anger, and confusion. Emily held them through nights filled with tears and nightmares, whispering reassurances she barely felt herself. She told them stories of Daniel's bravery, of how he had always protected them and how much he loved them. These stories became lifelines, helping the children understand the love that still surrounded them even in his absence. They clung to her, finding comfort in her presence, and slowly, the routines of life became slightly easier to manage. Emily found herself facing the community and media more often than she expected. Interviews, vigils, and public discussions about the tragedy demanded her presence and her voice. She struggled with the exposure, torn between protecting her children and advocating for change. But she knew that sharing Daniel's story could help prevent similar tragedies. Her words were careful yet powerful, speaking to the human cost of mistakes and the importance of accountability and compassion. She wanted people to understand that behind every news report, there was a real family, real children, and a real loss. The investigation into the officers' actions continued for months, revealing a series of missteps that led to the fatal incident. The wrong address, miscommunication, and rapid escalation had all contributed. Emily followed the proceedings closely, hoping for justice and accountability, even while knowing no amount of investigation could bring Daniel back. She listened to reports, read articles, and spoke with attorneys and advocates, determined to understand every aspect of what had happened. Every detail, every revelation was painful, yet necessary to process the events and seek some measure of closure. Therapy became an essential part of Emily's life. She sought professional guidance not only for herself, but also for the children. Sessions helped them express their emotions, navigate grief, and build coping strategies. The therapist helped Emily understand that grief was not something to rush or hide, but to acknowledge and work through. Slowly, she learned to balance her own sorrow with the needs of her children, finding strength in the process and resilience in the small victories of each day. The community continued to support them in meaningful ways. Friends, neighbors, and even strangers provided meals, childcare, and moral support. Vigils and memorials honored Daniel, allowing the family to feel connected to those who shared in their grief and admired his courage. These acts of kindness offered glimpses of hope, reminding Emily that even in tragedy, there was compassion, solidarity, and humanity. The neighborhood, once a backdrop to ordinary life, had become a place where stories of bravery, love, and loss intertwined, leaving an indelible impact on everyone who lived there. Emily also found purpose in advocacy. She began speaking about the importance of verifying information, clear communication, and careful decision-making in high-stakes situations. Her voice, calm but firm, reached audiences beyond her immediate community. She participated in panels, wrote letters, and shared Daniel's story with policymakers and organizations focused on law enforcement accountability. Each effort felt like a tribute to Daniel, a way to ensure that his death would not be in vain. It was a way to transform grief into action, sorrow into meaningful change. The children, with their mother's guidance, started to express themselves through small acts of remembrance. They drew pictures, wrote notes, and created little memorials in their home, keeping Daniel's presence alive in their daily lives. Emily encouraged these expressions, understanding that memory could be a powerful tool for healing. She shared stories of Daniel's bravery and kindness, reinforcing the lessons of love, courage, and protection he had instilled in their family. Each day became a balance between acknowledging loss and nurturing hope. The officers involved in the incident faced disciplinary actions and public scrutiny. The investigation revealed systemic issues and the need for reform. Policies were reviewed, training programs were updated, and discussions about accountability and communication became central topics. The reality of the consequences weighed heavily on them, as they struggled to reconcile their intent to serve and protect with the irreversible outcome of their actions. The story highlighted the delicate balance between duty, human error, and the value of life, leaving an impression on the entire department and community. Emily learned to navigate a life transformed by tragedy. She developed routines that provided stability for her children, while also allowing space for grief. She celebrated small victories, days when the children laughed, moments of calm, or simple routines successfully completed. Each day was a testament to resilience, a quiet acknowledgement of strength in the face of immense loss. She discovered that life could continue even after heartbreak, and that love and memory could provide guidance through the darkest times. The neighborhood, too, evolved. Residents shared their stories, supported one another, and discussed ways to prevent similar incidents. Community meetings focused on safety, communication, and empathy, creating a dialogue that emphasized understanding and cooperation. Emily participated when she felt ready, using her voice to highlight the human impact of the tragedy and to encourage thoughtful reflection and change. Her involvement offered a sense of purpose, a way to turn personal loss into a broader lesson for others. Emily's personal growth was intertwined with her advocacy. She became more aware of the fragility of life, the weight of decisions, and the need for compassion in every interaction. Her grief remained, but it was accompanied by a determination to honor Daniel's memory through positive action. She worked to instill values of courage, empathy, and resilience in her children, guiding them to understand that even in the face of loss, life could be meaningful and purposeful. The children gradually adapted to a new normal, carrying Daniel's memory in their hearts. They learned to navigate school, friendships, and daily routines without their father, relying on Emily's support and the lessons he had taught them. Each step forward was small but significant, a testament to their resilience and the enduring influence of Daniel's love and protection. Emily encouraged their growth while acknowledging the ongoing presence of grief, teaching them that it was okay to remember and to mourn, even while continuing to live. The story of that night remained a powerful reminder for everyone involved. It illustrated the human cost of mistakes, the importance of careful judgment, and the enduring impact of love and courage. Emily and her children carried Daniel's legacy forward through memory, advocacy, and daily acts of resilience. The neighborhood, the community, and even the officers involved were forever changed, their perspectives reshaped by the events that had unfolded. Emily's journey was one of adaptation, healing, and purpose. She learned to balance grief with hope, loss with action, and memory with forward movement. She became a pillar for her children, a voice for accountability, and a living tribute to Daniel's bravery. Her story, intertwined with the tragedy and the lessons it brought, became a testament to the human capacity for love, courage, and resilience. As years passed, the family continued to honor Daniel in small, meaningful ways. His presence remained alive in stories, memories, and traditions. Emily and her children found strength in each other, in the community, and in the knowledge that Daniel's actions that night, though ending tragically, were the ultimate expression of love and protection. Their lives, forever shaped by a single, devastating event, carried forward with courage, love, and a deep respect for the fragility and value of human life. In the end, the story was not only about tragedy, but also about resilience. It was about how a family, despite losing someone irreplaceable, could find ways to survive, to honor, and to create meaning from loss. It was about the enduring power of love and courage, the importance of memory, and the lessons learned when life is forever altered by a single mistake. Emily and her children lived with the echoes of that night, but they also lived with hope, strength, and a commitment to keep Daniel's legacy alive in everything they did. Their journey was ongoing, filled with sorrow and healing, grief and love, but always forward, carrying the story of courage, protection, and the human heart that had once stood in defense of what mattered most. Even after years had passed, the shadow of that night never fully left Emily and her children. They learned to live with the loss, to find small moments of joy and stability. Yet every anniversary, every siren, and every unexpected knock at the door reminded them of Daniel's absence. Life had changed in ways that could not be undone, yet it also revealed a strength they didn't know they had. Emily had become the anchor of the family, balancing grief with care and teaching her children how to navigate a world that could sometimes be unfair and harsh.